Hey guys, Chelsea here from Making Manzanita. In today's video, we are going to teach you how to stain with a sprayer, and specifically we're going to be using the Wagner FLEXiO 3000 paint sprayer. Even though the process I'm going to be walking you through is specifically for wood stain, the steps for using the paint sprayer are pretty much the same when you are painting. So if you're learning how to paint with the paint sprayer, this tutorial will also come in handy for you. We are going to be spraying stain on this firewood storage rack that we recently built. And the stain that we're using is made by Olympic. It's a transparent cedar natural tone. So it's not going to change the color of the wood a whole lot, but it will protect it from the elements. And the sprayer that we are using is Wagner's FLEXiO 3000 paint sprayer. You can see we've used this a lot. It's well loved, but we have never used it for stain before, so I'm excited to give it a try. So I started just by brushing off the storage rack with a broom to just make sure all the dust and dirt was off of it. Next, you can prepare your material. Again, we're using stain, so we just needed to open the can of stain and give it a nice good stir. Process is exactly the same if you are using paint. Next, you can pour the material into the cup. I just put a rag down and poured it right into the cup. I'm sure there's a cleaner way to do this because you can see I kind of made a mess, but this worked for me. I just wiped everything up when I was done, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Now, the direction of that pickup tube here is actually pretty important. When you are spraying upward, you want the angled tip to be pointed just like this away from the nozzle. And when you're spraying downward, you want it pointed to the front of the nozzle. And that's just so that wherever the liquid is running at the bottom of the cup, it will pick it up. So just keep that in mind. I'm gonna start by spraying upward. So I pointed it backwards or away from the nozzle, and then I got everything nice and tight with the cup. Next, if you haven't already, you wanna make sure that the sprayer and the nozzle are tightly connected. There's a clip there right below the trigger that my hand is on that just kind of clips it in place. So you can see it's pretty easy to take off, and then you just slide it back on and make sure it is clipped and locked. Now, there are a number of controls on the machine that I'm going to quickly walk you through. This round ring at the top with the numbers is the material flow control, and it of course determines the amount of material that gets sprayed out of the gun. This yellow part here is the trigger. This nozzle at the very top adjusts your spray width, whether it's narrow or wide. And then this front yellow part adjusts the spray shape. So when you are spraying up and down vertically, you want to have it like this. You can see those yellow part kind of is a good reminder of which direction you have it pointed. And then when you're spraying vertically, a side to side motion, you want to have it twisted so that those yellow indicators are going left to right. There is a lot that goes into your spray performance, and to be honest, if you are using your paint sprayer for the first time, I would recommend you thoroughly looking at the wonderful and super complete owner's manual, which walks you through everything. One thing that is super handy in the owner's manual is the power and material settings guide. It walks you through all of the different types of coatings that you may be using and tells you recommended material flow and air power. So you can see I'm using stain, so I'm gonna go with a minimum of 2 on my air power, and I want the material flow to be approximately 2. So that's what I'll start at, that's the recommendation, and then I'll adjust as needed. So the air power is right here on the very top of the nozzle, and you can see here it gives you a little picture guide which walks you through kind of the different size and types of materials, and then you just adjust the air power by moving that knob at the very top. So I'm going to start with my air power set at the minimum level, and then I'll move on to adjust the material flow. You can see this has some numbers on it, so you can just adjust that. Again, I'm going to start at the lowest level. It's recommended for thinner materials that you start at a low material flow and then gradually increase as needed. Next, I will adjust the spray width. I'm going to just start with it pretty narrow for my project and then just see what adjustments I need to make. So if possible, you want to try to start on the back of your project or an area that's not going to be seen. So the back of mine is going to be against the fence, so that's where I started. I started spraying and noticed I needed to make a couple of adjustments to my settings to get it working right, and then I just got to town spraying. So you can see here that I just worked my way around side by side. I adjusted that spray shape when I was changing from spraying vertically and horizontally. And then you just want to try to keep it as consistent as possible. So spraying technique, let's talk about that real quick. One of the most important things is that you keep your arm moving when the gun is being triggered. So if you pause or stop in one spot too long, too much material is going to get sprayed. The other really important part is that you keep your gun at an equal distance from the surface that you're spraying. So it's recommended to do about 6 to 8 inches. And instead of flexing your wrist back and forth, you want to try to keep the stroke smooth and at an even speed on the spraying. Here's a closer look at the speed at which I'm spraying, and I will turn the sound down here so you can hear the sound that the machine makes so you can have an idea of the noise involved. You want to try to keep the spray gun as parallel as possible to the work surface and work in smooth passes at a consistent speed. And this is going to help just avoid any irregularities in the finish, like sags, drips, or running. Here's what it looked like when it was all finished. There wasn't a huge change in color because again, we're just doing sort of a natural cedar tone stain, but you can see there's a little excess stain sitting on the top of the wood. I gave that some time to soak in, and I ended up not even needing to rub everything down because all of it soaked in. But if you noticed that there was any stain on the wood after it had a chance to soak in, you could just wipe it down with a stain cloth. So you can see it's a nice even finish, and it got into all of the nooks and crannies on this project, which would have been a pain to stain by hand. All of those little pocket holes and in between the slats, this paint sprayer worked perfectly for this. Cleanup for the paint sprayer is not too bad. So here's the basic process. You want to do kind of a half turn on that cup to release the pressure, and then pour any excess material back into your can, and then fill that cap about half full with water. I was just using a hose because I was outside, and then tighten it back onto the machine and be sure it's plugged in, and then just use a spare bucket you have laying around and spray all of that water out of the machine, kind of gently shaking it as you go. This will help loosen any material that's stuck inside the machine. Then you can just take the nozzle off and all of the parts from the nozzle. Take those all apart, and then I usually just clean those in our bathtub or in the kitchen sink, which is some warm soapy water. All of those clean up pretty nicely. You can see on that nozzle there's 3 parts which you will take apart. You want to be sure you get them all apart and cleaned off before the paint or stain has a chance to dry. And here is how that firewood storage rack turned out. I absolutely love it. I love the just neutral, natural tone of that stain, and I love that that wood is going to be protected from the elements because it is outside. Perfect here in our backyard next to our fire pit and just storing the firewood for that fire pit. Overall, I think the FLEXiO 3000 paint sprayer worked perfectly for our stain. I would say it was very easy to use, perfect for a beginner. Like the first time you use your paint sprayer, would say it's even easier to use with stain, and you can get all of the controls and the motions and just everything down using your paint sprayer for the first time. Thank you so much for Wagner for sponsoring this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed this and learned something new about the Wagner FLEXiO 3000 paint sprayer. If you have any other questions, feel free to just drop them in the comments below. And if you liked this video, be sure to subscribe to our channel. We share tons of renovation tips and tricks, and we will see you guys next time. Have a great day.